A man once feared as a Mafia kingpin makes a choice no one sees coming. In 1995, a Mafia boss adopted 3 black teens. 20 years later, he got a shocking call. He thought he saved those girls from a life of danger. He thought he left the violence behind. But now, decades later, someone is hunting him, using his old crimes and his old name. His 3 daughters rush back to protect him, but the closer they get, the more terrifying the truth becomes. Someone out there knows every secret from the past, secrets even the girls never knew. And when a brutal new enemy rises, copying the same cold methods the boss once used, is someone framing them? Or did the past they escaped finally come back to collect its debt? Who is coming for the man who saved them? And how far will these daughters go to protect the only father they've ever known? Drop a comment below and share which part of the world you're tuning in from today. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more. The rain pattered against the windshield of Lina Calderon's unmarked federal vehicle, creating a hypnotic rhythm that matched her steady breathing. She'd been parked in the same spot for 6 hours, monitoring the abandoned warehouse across the street where their target was supposed to make an appearance. Chicago's industrial district looked especially grim tonight, with sodium lights casting sickly yellow halos through the downpour. Her phone vibrated against the center console, breaking her concentration. The screen displayed Dad, unusual for Vittorio to call this late. Something twisted in her gut as she answered. Papa? Static crackled through the line. Then Vittorio's voice came through, trembling in a way she'd never heard before. Lina, Mafia. His words were rushed, breathless. They found me. They're using the old name, Il Lupo, the wolf. Ice shot through Lina's veins. That name belonged to a past Vittorio had buried decades ago when he'd walked away from his criminal empire to raise 3 broken girls and give them a different life. Who found you? Papa, what's happening? She gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles went white. No time. They're coming to kill me. I can feel it. More static interference garbled his words. Ti amo, my daughter. Remember what I taught you? The line went dead. Papa? Papa. Lina's heart hammered against her ribs as she tried calling back. No answer. With shaking fingers, she pulled up her sister's group chat. Joy and Michaela needed to know immediately. They were all federal agents now. Joy in cyber intelligence, Michaela in deep cover operations. But family came first. Always. Emergency, Papa called. Someone's coming for him. Using his old name. Need to move now. Joy's response came first. What? Are you sure? Michaela's followed. I'm coming with you. Where? New York, meeting at his place. He's not answering callbacks. Lina was already pulling up the agency's emergency leave request form on her phone. The mission she was supposed to be running surveillance for was classified level 4. Leaving now could compromise months of work. But this was Papa, the man who'd found 3 traumatized girls in a blood-soaked warehouse and given them a home, an education, a future. The man who'd trained them to protect themselves while teaching them to be better than the violence that had shaped their early years. Her request pinged back almost immediately with a denial. Agent Marlowe's name was attached. Of course. The tactical officer had always resented her rapid rise through the ranks, her perfect mission completion record. His response was clipped and official. Request denied due to operational sensitivity. Maintain position. Like hell, Lina muttered, shutting down her surveillance equipment. She sent a quick text to her handler explaining the family emergency, then grabbed her go-bag from the trunk. It contained everything she needed: spare clothes, backup weapon, burner phones, cash. Years of training had taught her to always be ready to move. The rain soaked through her jacket as she jogged to her personal vehicle, parked 2 blocks away. Her service weapon was a comfortable weight against her ribs, but she added her backup piece in an ankle holster. Whatever was coming for Vittorio, she wasn't walking in unprepared. Chicago O'Hare was crowded despite the late hour. Lina moved through security with practiced ease, her federal credentials smoothing the way despite her concealed weapon. Her mind raced through possibilities as she waited at the gate. Who had discovered Vittorio's old identity? Why now, after all these years? The criminal empire he'd built and then deliberately dismantled had been dead for decades. Joy's text lit up her phone. Booking next flight out. 4 hours. Running background checks on recent threats. Michaela followed. In deep cover op. We'll extract as soon as possible. Watch your 6, sis. The last flight to New York began boarding. Lina found her window seat, stowing her go-bag overhead. As the plane taxied toward takeoff, she watched rain streak across the small window, city lights blurring into wet smears of color. 25 years ago, Vittorio Calderone had walked into that warehouse and found 3 terrified girls huddled behind crates, covered in blood that wasn't theirs. He'd holstered his gun, knelt down to their level, and promised no one would ever hurt them again. That night, the infamous Il Lupo, the wolf of the Chicago underworld, had died, replaced by a father determined to give his adopted daughters a better life than the one that had nearly destroyed them. Now someone wanted to drag that past back into the light, wanted to kill the man who'd saved them, trained them, loved them enough to walk away from an empire. Lena's jaw clenched as the plane lifted into the stormy sky. Her fingers traced the outline of her weapon, a habit that always steadied her nerves. The city lights below grew smaller, twinkling through gaps in the clouds like distant stars. "Not happening," she whispered to herself. "Not while I'm breathing." The flight attendant offered her a drink, but Lena declined. She needed to stay sharp. Instead, she pulled out her phone and began reviewing everything she knew about Vittorio's former organization. Most of the old players were dead or imprisoned, but someone had clearly been doing their homework, digging up ghosts better left buried. Her training kicked in, compartmentalizing emotion behind the cool logic needed for tactical planning. The 3-hour flight would give her time to strategize, to prepare for whatever waited in New York. Joy would dig up any digital traces, Michaela would leverage her underworld contacts, and Lena would do what she did best, hunt down threats and neutralize them. Rain continued battering the plane's wing outside her window. The weather matched her mood, dark, turbulent, promising violence. She'd broken protocol walking away from her surveillance post, but some things mattered more than rules. Family, loyalty, love. Vittorio had taught them that, even as he trained them to survive in a world that often lacked all 3. He'd given them the skills of his former life while guiding them toward legitimate paths to use those abilities. Under his care, they'd transformed from broken victims into protectors, federal agents who used their hard-won knowledge to help others. Now it was time to protect him. The plane descended through layers of clouds, the lights of New York City appearing below like a glittering web. Somewhere in that sprawl of humanity, someone was moving against her father, someone who didn't understand what they were really starting. They thought they were hunting the wolf. Instead, they were about to meet his daughters. Lena checked her weapon one final time as the landing gear deployed. Whatever came next, she was ready. The girl who'd once hidden from violence was gone, replaced by a woman trained to face it head-on. She'd learned from the best, after all. The plane touched down with a gentle bump, rain still falling steadily outside. As other passengers began gathering their belongings, Lena remained seated, watching the terminal approach through the wet window. Her mind was already mapping out next steps, securing transport, checking Vittorio's building perimeter, coordinating with her sisters. Time seemed to crawl as the plane taxied to the gate. Every minute that passed was another minute something could be happening to her father. But Lena forced herself to maintain calm, to move with deliberate purpose rather than panic. Vittorio's voice echoed in her memory. "Patience, mi figlia. Russian blind, and you give your enemy the advantage." Finally, the seatbelt sign dinged off. Lena retrieved her go-bag and moved smoothly through the deplaning process, her federal credentials once again easing her path through the terminal. The late-night crowd had thinned considerably, letting her move quickly toward ground transportation. New York's familiar noise and energy wrapped around her as she emerged from the airport. The rain had followed her from Chicago, turning taxi lights into blurred streaks of yellow against the darkness. She hailed a cab, giving an address 3 blocks from Vittorio's building. Never go directly to Target, another lesson learned at his knee. As the taxi pulled away from the curb, Lena sent a final update to her sisters. "Landed. Moving to location. Stay alert." She watched the city scroll past her window, every sense heightened, every muscle coiled for action. Whatever waited at the end of this ride, she was ready to face it. The wolf's daughter was coming home, and heaven help anyone who stood in her way. The taxi's headlights cut through pre-dawn darkness as Lena directed the driver toward the quiet Brooklyn neighborhood where Vittorio lived under federal protection. Her body ached from the sleepless flight, but adrenaline kept her alert, scanning the empty streets for signs of surveillance. 3 blocks from her destination, she paid cash and waited until the taxi disappeared around a corner before moving on foot. The safe apartment occupied the 3rd floor of a weathered brownstone, chosen for its multiple escape routes and clear sightlines. As she approached, Lena noted Joy's nondescript sedan and Michaela's motorcycle already parked nearby. Her sisters had made good time. The building's security system recognized her biometrics, allowing silent entry. Each step up the narrow stairwell echoed with memories, running these same stairs as teenagers while Vittorio timed them, learning to move quietly to always be aware. Now those lessons merged with the bone-deep exhaustion, creating a fog of anxiety and old fear she struggled to push aside. At the third floor, she pressed her palm to the hidden scanner beside the reinforced door. 2 locks disengaged with barely audible clicks. Inside, warm light spilled from the kitchen, carrying the scent of coffee and something cooking. "Clear!" Michaela's voice called out, their old code confirming the space was secure. Lena found her sisters exactly as expected. Joy cross-legged on the couch, 3 laptops running different decryption programs while she typed rapidly. Michaela stood at the stove, her weapon within easy reach as she stirred what looked like oatmeal. And there in his favorite armchair sat Vittorio. Her heart clenched at the sight of him. He'd lost weight since her last visit, his once imposing frame diminished by illness and age. But his eyes were sharp as ever as they met hers. "Mafia," he said softly. "My daughter." Lena crossed to him, dropping her go bag to wrap him in a careful hug. His embrace was weaker than she remembered, but his kiss on her cheek was still warm. "You should have called us sooner," she murmured, "and worry my girls needlessly." He tried to smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I thought I could handle this myself." "Like hell," Michaela interrupted, carrying over a bowl of oatmeal. "Eat, Papa. You need your strength." Joy looked up from her screens long enough to add, "Your blood sugar was low when we got here. The medicine won't work properly if you don't eat regularly." Vittorio accepted the bowl with a resigned sigh. 3 mother hens, all of you. I raised you too well." "You raised us to survive," Lena said, pulling up a chair beside him. "Now tell us what's really happening. Who's using your old name?" He stirred the oatmeal without eating. "It started small. Notes left where only someone who knew my routines would place them. Photos of the old days appearing in my mail." "Why didn't the protective detail catch this?" Michaela demanded. "Because I didn't report it." Vittorio's voice hardened. "I've spent 15 years building a new life, keeping you girls safe from my past. I thought I could contain this." Joy's typing paused. "The protective detail reports no security breaches. Whoever's doing this has intimate knowledge of your movements and the federal protocols." "That's what worries me," Vittorio admitted. "The messages, they reference things only my inner circle would have known. Operations we ran, decisions I made. But those men are all dead or in prison." Lena leaned forward. "Give us names, Papa. Anyone who might have survived might want revenge." "You think I haven't gone over it 1,000 times?" Real fear crept into his voice. "I dismantled everything, walked away clean, made sure there were no loose ends that could lead back to you girls. But these killings—" "What killings?" Lena's hand instinctively moved toward her weapon. Vittorio gestured to Joy, who pulled up several news articles on one of her screens. 3 deaths in the past month, each staged to mirror executions from my time as head of the family. Perfect recreations down to details that were never made public. Michaela moved to look over Joy's shoulder. "They're sending a message, showing they know the family's history." "More than that," Vittorio said. "They're working their way through my past, getting closer. The first victim was someone who'd worked as a low-level runner 30 years ago. The second had been a warehouse manager. Last week, they found my old consigliere's son." "Each one closer to the inner circle," Lena murmured. "They're coming for you, Papa." He nodded heavily. "And they want me to see it coming, to know death is approaching, just as I once dealt it to others." The room fell silent except for the soft hum of Joy's computers. Sunlight was beginning to creep through the windows, painting the walls in pale gold. Lena watched her father's hands trembling slightly as he finally took a spoonful of oatmeal. "We need to move you," she decided. "Set up a new safe house, one not connected to the federal system." "I have some options," Michaela offered. "Off-grid locations from my undercover work." Joy shook her head. "First, we need to understand how they're accessing this much information. The level of detail in these recreations suggests either extensive surveillance or inside access to classified files." "Both, maybe," Lena said. "Joy, dig deeper into any digital trails. Michaela, start working your street contacts. I'll coordinate with our team leads, see if—" She broke off as movement caught her eye. Rising smoothly, she moved to the window, careful to stay behind the protective glass. A black sedan had parked across the street, its engine still running. The windows were tinted, but she could make out at least 2 occupants. "Company?" Michaela asked quietly, moving to check the other windows. Could be coincidence, Lena replied, though she didn't believe it. The car had positioned itself with clear sightlines to both the building's entrance and fire escape. Joy's fingers flew across her keyboard. Running the plates now. It's a rental, registered to a shell company. Give me time to trace it back. Vittorio pushed himself up from his chair, moving to stand beside Lena. His reflection in the glass looked ghostly, overlaying the street scene beyond. They're watching, he said softly, like I taught them to do so many years ago. Wait, study, learn the target's patterns. Lena felt her jaw tighten as she observed the vehicle through eyes trained by both predator and prey. The car's position, the timing of its arrival, the stillness of its occupants, all spoke of professional surveillance. They were being watched by someone who knew exactly what they were doing, someone who had learned from the wolf himself how to hunt. The morning sun climbed higher, streaming through the window and warming Lena's face as she maintained her vigil. Behind her, she could hear Joy's rapid typing, Michaela checking their weapons, Vittorio's slightly labored breathing, her family preparing for a fight she'd never wanted them to face. But they would face it together, as they had everything else since the day Vittorio had chosen to save 3 broken children and give them a future. Whatever shadow from his past now threatened that future, they would meet it head-on. The black car remained motionless on the street below, a silent warning that the past was never truly buried. The game had begun, and the stakes were life itself. Lena's fingers flew across her phone screen, connecting to her most trusted contact at the bureau. 3 rings, then a familiar voice answered. Matthew's here. I need confirmation on surveillance parameters for the Calderone residence. Lena kept her voice low, moving away from the window where the black sedan still idled. Any units assigned to this location this morning? Negative. Standard rotation was pulled last night due to budget cuts. Why? Lena's jaw tightened. Just checking protocols, thanks. She ended the call, turning to her sisters. That car isn't ours. Fantastic, Michaela muttered, checking her weapon. So, we've got unknown hostiles with eyes on Papa. Before Lena could respond, Joy's laptop chimed. Got something? Police dispatch just logged a priority call in Little Italy. Officers requesting backup for a scene matching the pattern of our mystery killer. Another body? Lena asked, already reaching for her jacket. No details given, but they specifically referenced the Calderone case files. Vittorio looked up sharply. Where exactly? Mulberry Street, behind DeStefano's. Joy was already packing up her equipment. My old territory, Vittorio said quietly, where I first established power. Lena squeezed his shoulder. Stay here. Keep the doors locked. We'll check it out. Be careful, my daughters. His weathered hand covered hers briefly. Whoever this is, they're playing a long game. The sisters moved with practiced efficiency, gathering what they needed. Within minutes, they were sliding into Lena's unmarked car, Joy's equipment secured in the trunk, Michaela riding shotgun with a hand near her concealed weapon. The morning traffic was building as they wound through Manhattan's streets. Lena took a circuitous route, watching for tails while Joy monitored police channels from the back seat. 2 units on scene now, she reported. They're keeping civilians back but haven't called in homicide yet. No body this time, Michaela mused. So what's the play? Lena guided them through narrow streets lined with Italian restaurants and specialty shops, the heart of what had once been Vittorio Calderone's empire. Now tourist crowds mingled with local residents, none aware of the bloody history beneath their feet. They parked a block away and approached on foot. The alley behind DeStefano's was cordoned off, 2 patrol cars blocking the ends. Lena flashed her federal credentials, getting them through the perimeter. The narrow passage smelled of garlic and garbage, steam rising from kitchen vents above. About halfway down, 3 officers clustered around, something placed deliberately in a shaft of morning light. Lena's steps slowed as she took in the scene. No blood, no body, just a precise arrangement that made her blood run cold. A pristine white chess piece, a rook, sat atop yellowed newspaper clippings spread in a careful fan pattern. The headlines screamed from decades past. Mob massacre leaves 12 dead. Calderone Empire strikes again. Bloody Sunday claims more victims. Jesus, Michaela breathed, crouching to examine the articles. These are all about Papa's worst hits, things that never made it into official records. Joy was already photographing everything with her specialized camera. The papers are originals, not copies. Someone's been collecting these for years. But Lena barely heard them. Her focus was locked on the rook, its polished surface gleaming in the morning light. She knew that piece, knew the slight chip on its base, the way the crown was carved with precise, sharp edges. The Rourke family had always marked their territories and warnings with chess. Pieces, white for messages, black for deaths. And the rook, the castle, that had been his preferred piece. Damon's. Memories crashed through her carefully constructed walls, dark eyes watching her with dangerous intensity, strong hands gentle on her skin, whispered promises in the night. The way he'd looked at her the last time she'd seen him, fury and betrayal warring with something deeper, something that had terrified her more than his rage. "Lena!" Joy's voice snapped her back to the present. "You okay?" "Fine." She forced her voice steady. "What else can you tell me about the scene?" "Professionally staged," Michaela reported, still examining the arrangement. "No prints. I'd bet money on it. The papers are weathered but preserved, like they have been stored carefully. And the placement is exact. Everything aligned to catch the morning light just so." In the distance, sirens wailed closer. Joy looked up from her camera. "More units incoming. If we want to maintain cover, we should clear out." Lena nodded sharply. "Pack it up, quick and clean." As her sisters gathered their gear, she moved forward and with a gloved hand picked up the white rook. The weight of it was familiar in her palm, bringing back memories of late nights watching him play chess, explaining strategy, teaching her to think 10 moves ahead. She slipped the piece into her pocket just as the first additional units arrived at the alley's entrance, their lights painting the brick walls in red and blue. The sisters melted away before questions could be asked, emerging onto the busy sidewalk where morning commuters rushed past, unaware of the deadly game unfolding in their midst. Joy checked her tablet as they walked. "I'll start running deep searches on the newspaper archives, see if I can trace who might have access to these kinds of historical records. And I'll put out feelers to my street contacts," Michaela added. "Someone must have seen something." But Lena barely heard them. The rook felt like it was burning through her pocket, a weight far heavier than its size warranted. After all these years, all her careful work to build a new life, the past was reaching out with familiar hands to drag her back into the shadows. She'd run from Damon Rourke once, choosing duty over desire, law over love. But as they reached their car, she knew with bone-deep certainty that running wasn't an option anymore. This carefully staged message, these deliberate breadcrumbs, they were more than a warning. They were an invitation, or a summons. The morning sun caught the golden cross hanging into Stefano's window, casting prison bar shadows across her face as she slid behind the wheel. In her pocket, the white rook pressed against her thigh, a constant reminder that some games, once started, had to be played to the end. Around them, Little Italy was coming fully awake, the smell of fresh bread and coffee filling the air as shopkeepers raised their awnings and early customers lingered over, breakfast in sidewalk cafes. Life moving forward, unaware of the currents of violence and vengeance swirling beneath the surface. Joy was already typing rapidly on her laptop in the back seat, while Michaela scanned the streets with sharp eyes, watching for any sign of surveillance. They were good at their jobs, the best in their fields, but this wasn't just another case, another threat to neutralize. This was personal. This was family. This was the past reaching out with both hands to strangle the future they'd built. As Lena navigated through the awakening city, her mind raced through possibilities, strategies, contingencies. But beneath it all ran a current of certainty. Sooner or later, she would have to face him again, would have to look into those dark eyes and see what remained of the man she'd loved, the man she'd betrayed. The white rook in her pocket seemed to pulse with that truth, a beacon calling her back to everything she'd tried to leave behind. Lena's fingers flew across her laptop keyboard, her eyes burning from hours of searching through databases. The white rook sat beside her, a silent reminder of everything at stake. Dead ends and false leads had filled her day, every potential Rourke connection leading nowhere. The sun had long since set over Chicago's skyline, casting her temporary safe house in shadows. Her phone buzzed again, probably Joy or Michaela checking in, but she ignored it. Her instincts were pulling her toward the warehouse district, where many of Vittorio's old operations had run. If someone was recreating his past crimes, that area would be next. She shouldn't go alone. She knew better. But calling in backup meant explaining things she couldn't afford to reveal. The warehouse loomed before her 20 minutes later, its broken windows like empty eyes in the darkness. Her boots crunched softly on scattered glass as she moved through the entrance, gun drawn. The air hung thick with dust and decay. A whisper of movement was her only warning. They came from everywhere at once, silent, coordinated, professional. She managed to slam an elbow into one attacker's solar plexus, but strong arms locked around her from behind. A cloth pressed over her mouth and nose. She held her breath, twisting hard, but another set of hands grabbed her legs. Darkness crept in at the edges of her vision. Her last conscious thought was that she should have listened to that inner voice warning her this was a trap. When awareness returned, she was in motion, being half carried through what looked like an upscale apartment building. Her head swam, limbs still heavy from whatever they'd used to subdue her. The men holding her were dressed in tactical black, moving with military precision. They emerged into a penthouse that screamed wealth and power, Italian leather, crystal chandeliers, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. But Lena barely registered any of it. Her attention locked on the man standing by those windows, his back to her as he stared out at the Chicago skyline. Even after 8 years, she would know that silhouette anywhere. Damon Rourke. He turned slowly, and her breath caught. Time had hardened him, carved deeper lines around his mouth, added silver at his temples. The boy she'd loved had become something far more dangerous, a predator in an expertly tailored suit. His dark eyes burned with barely controlled fury as they met hers. "Let me go," she said, proud that her voice remained steady despite the way her heart hammered against her ribs. "Not happening." His voice was deeper than she remembered, rougher. He nodded to his men, who released her but remained close. She straightened, refusing to show weakness. "This is kidnapping a federal agent. You're making a mistake." The mistake, he stalked closer, was finding one of my lieutenants dead this morning, killed in a style I haven't seen in 15 years. His lips curved in a bitter smile. "Your father's style." "What are you talking about? Don't play innocent, Lena. It doesn't suit you." He reached into his jacket and threw a photo onto the glass coffee table between them. "Recognize the work?" She moved closer, stomach turning at the image. The victim had been staged exactly like one of Vittorio's old hits, down to the smallest detail that had never made it into police reports. "Someone's trying to frame my father," she said. "He received death threats. That's why I'm here." "And the Rook left at another scene?" Damon's voice dripped skepticism. "My family's calling card? I found it this morning. I've spent all day trying to figure out who's behind this." He studied her face intently, searching for lies. Some of the tension left his shoulders, though his expression remained hard. "Then it seems we have a common enemy." "Great. Now let me go, and we can both handle this our own way." "No." He moved closer until she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. "Someone is trying to start a war between our families. They know things only insiders would know. Until I figure out who and why, you're staying right here where I can watch you." "Like hell I am. I have work to do. Your sisters can handle it." At her startled look, he smiled grimly. "Yes, I know all about your little family business. The question is, what else are you hiding?" "Nothing that concerns you." She tried to step around him, but he caught her arm. "Everything about you concerns me." His fingers burned through her sleeve. 8 years ago, you walked away without a word. Now this happens. I don't believe in coincidences. Let go. Each word was ice. "No." He released her arm but blocked her path to the door. "Someone is playing a very dangerous game, using our past against us. Until I know who, you're staying here. I'm not your prisoner. Consider yourself my guest." His smile held no warmth. A heavily guarded one. She glanced around, noting the men positioned at every exit. "And if I refuse?" "You won't." He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming her senses. "Because deep down, you know I'm right. Whoever is behind this knows too much about both of us. They want us at each other's throats. The smart play is to work together." She hated that his logic made sense. Hated even more how her body remembered his proximity, the heat of him, the scent of his cologne mixing with leather and something distinctly male. "Fine," she bit out. "But we do this my way. No violence, no illegal tactics." He laughed, the sound dark and without humor. "Still trying to play by the rules, Bella. That's not how this world works. You know that better than most." "I'm not that girl anymore." "No?" He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. She fought not to lean into the touch. "We'll see." The simple contact sent electricity racing along her nerve endings. She stepped back quickly, needing distance from the dangerous pull of him. "I'll need my phone and my laptop." "Already being brought up, along with your other things." At her surprised look, he smiled that predator's smile again. I had my men collect them while you were indisposed." "Of course you did." She moved to the windows, needing to gather her thoughts. The city sparkled below, oblivious to the drama unfolding above. "How long do you plan to keep me here?" "Until I have answers." She heard him move behind her, felt the heat of his body, though he didn't touch her. "Until I know you're not involved, until I understand why you really left." "That's not relevant to this situation." "Everything is relevant." His voice dropped lower, intimate. "Every choice, every lie, every secret. Someone is using our history as a weapon. To understand why, we need to examine every piece of that history." She turned to face him, fighting to keep her expression neutral, despite the memories his words stirred. "The past is dead. Focus on the present threat." "The past is never dead." He reached past her to press a button, and metal shutters began descending over the windows. "It just waits for the right moment to rise again." The soft whir of the shutters seemed unnaturally loud in the growing tension between them. When the last sliver of city light vanished, he stepped back and pulled out his phone. "I'll have dinner sent up. Make yourself comfortable." He headed for the door, pausing with his hand on the handle. "And Lena, don't bother looking for escape routes. Every exit is guarded, every system state-of-the-art. You're here until I say otherwise." The lock engaged with a heavy click that seemed to echo in her bones. She was trapped in a luxury cage with the one man she'd never been able to forget. The man whose heart she'd broken to save her family. And somewhere out there, someone was orchestrating this entire situation, using their shared history to create chaos. She had to find out who and why before more bodies dropped. But first, she had to figure out how to survive being confined with Damon Rourke. And all the unresolved emotions that simmered between them. Sunlight crept through the penthouse's metal shutters, finding Lena already dressed and alert after a sleepless night. Her footsteps had worn an invisible path in the guest room's plush carpet, her mind racing with possibilities and escape plans, each one more impossible than the last. A knock at the door made her pause. "Breakfast," Damon's voice carried through the wood, deep and controlled. She opened the door to find him impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, looking far too composed for her liking. "I need to call my sisters." "After you eat," he gestured to the dining room where a spread waited. "Now," she insisted, crossing her arms. "They could be in danger." His jaw tightened. "Fine, but you'll use my secure line. I won't risk the killer tracking the call." She wanted to argue, but knew he was right. Following him to his office, she watched as he activated an encrypted connection on a sleek black phone. The technology looked military-grade, reminding her that the Rourke syndicate's reach extended far beyond street crime. Joy answered on the second ring. "Lena, thank God, are you okay?" "I'm fine." She ignored Damon's presence behind her, his breath tickling her neck. "What's happening?" "We might have something." Joy's fingers clicked rapidly over keys in the background. "I've been analyzing surveillance footage from near the warehouse district. There's a pattern, a professional hitman, possibly former military. He's using elevated positions, copying Dad's old methodology." Damon stepped closer, his chest nearly touching her back. "Where?" Lena jumped, not realizing he could hear the call. Joy hesitated before continuing. "An abandoned office building on 34th Street. The roof provides clear sightlines to 3 major intersections." "Text the coordinates," Damon ordered. "We'll check it out." "We?" Lena spun to face him. "I work alone." "Not anymore." His eyes hardened. "My city, my rules." 2 hours later, they stood in the shadow of the weathered building. Lena's federal training screamed at her to call for backup, but she knew Damon would never allow it. They climbed 15 flights in tense silence, his hand occasionally brushing her lower back when she slowed, sending unwanted sparks through her body. The rooftop door creaked open to reveal a maze of ventilation units and ancient satellite dishes. Wind whipped Lena's hair as she scanned the perimeter, noting shell casings near the eastern edge. "Someone's definitely been here." She moved toward the evidence, analyzing angles and sightlines. The position would give a clear view of both their territories, Rourke's downtown holdings and the Little Italy neighborhood where Vittorio once ruled. The whistle came first, a high-pitched sound that made her blood run cold. Then the concrete exploded inches from her head. "Down!" Damon's body slammed into hers as another shot cracked through the air. They tumbled behind a massive ventilation unit, his larger frame covering hers completely. Heat bloomed across his shoulder as a bullet grazed him, tearing fabric and flesh. "Stay down," he growled, pressing her harder against the roof as more shots peppered their shelter. The rage rolling off him was palpable, his muscles coiled tight with barely contained violence. Blood seeped through his jacket where the bullet had clipped him. Lena reached up to assess the wound, but he caught her wrist. "It's nothing. You're bleeding. And you're marked." His voice dropped dangerously low. "That wasn't a warning shot, Bella. They're aiming to kill." More gunfire forced them to huddle closer. Damon's phone buzzed, and he checked it one-handed while maintaining his protective stance. "My men spotted the shooter, 3 buildings east, moving fast. We need to pursue—" "No," he cut her off with a snarl. "We're getting out of here, now." Before she could protest, he dragged her toward the stairwell, using his body as a shield until they reached safety. Inside, he slammed her against the wall, his hands framing her face. "Do you understand what just happened?" His control snapped, voice rising with each word. "They weren't shooting at me. Every shot was aimed at you. You're their primary target." "I can handle myself," she shot back, but her hands trembled slightly. "Like hell!" He grabbed her arm, propelling her down the stairs at a brutal pace. "You're not leaving my sight?" They emerged into the fading evening light, where a sleek black SUV idled at the curb, heavily armored and waiting. Damon's security team formed a protective circle as he shoved her toward the vehicle. "What about my sisters, my father?" She planted her feet, refusing to move. "They need protection." "My men are already watching them." He yanked open the car door. "But you're staying with me." "The hell I am." "I don't lose what's mine." His words carried the weight of an oath, dark and possessive. Before she could react, he pushed her into the car's bulletproof interior. The door slammed with finality, trapping her in the leather-scented darkness. Through the tinted windows, she watched Damon bark orders to his men, his shoulder still bleeding, but his movements showing no sign of pain. He slid in beside her moments later, and the car pulled smoothly into traffic. Lena stared straight ahead, acutely aware of his proximity in the confined space. Her mind raced through scenarios, each escape route, each possible play. But she knew with crushing certainty that Damon had outmaneuvered her. His resources, his territory, his rules. The city lights began to blur outside as they headed back toward his penthouse fortress. In the gathering darkness, she felt the weight of old memories pressing in. The last time she'd been in a car with him, the night she'd chosen duty over love and disappeared from his life. Now fate had thrown them back together, with a killer using their shared past as ammunition. And Damon's possessive declaration hung in the air between them, a promise and a threat wrapped into one. "I don't lose what's mine." The warmth of his body beside her, the lingering scent of his cologne mixed with gunpowder, the steady rhythm of his breathing. It all reminded her why she'd run in the first place. Because Damon Rourke was like gravity, and she'd always been in danger of falling. As the car wound through darkening streets, Lena forced herself to focus on the facts, on the investigation, on anything but the man beside her. Someone wanted her dead, wanted to tear open old wounds and reignite old feuds. She needed to stay sharp, stay objective. But with every turn bringing them closer to Damon's domain, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being pulled back into his orbit. And this time, escape might not be an option. The drive continued in taut silence, broken only by the occasional murmur of his men reporting in through earpieces. Damon's phone buzzed constantly with updates, his fingers flying over the keys as he coordinated his empire's response to the attack. Even wounded, he commanded his world with ruthless efficiency. Lena watched the city pass by, each familiar landmark reminding her how far she'd come from the world of blood and shadow she'd left behind. She'd built a new life, forged a new identity. But sitting here, surrounded by the trappings of Damon's power, she felt old instincts stirring, the ones that had kept her alive in his dangerous world. The car glided to a stop in the private garage beneath his building. Through the windshield, she could see more of his men waiting, the security clearly doubled since that morning. As the engine died, Lena squared her shoulders, preparing for whatever came next. But nothing could have prepared her for the storm brewing in Damon's eyes when he turned to face her, or the way her heart still responded to his proximity after all these years. The elevator ascended to Damon's penthouse, in silence, thick enough to cut. Lena kept her distance in the opposite corner, while his security team flanked them like stone sentinels. Blood had dried on Damon's shoulder, staining his expensive suit jacket where the bullet had grazed him. The doors opened to reveal Dr. Marcus Chen, already waiting, medical bag in hand. Damon's efficiency was infuriating. Of course, he'd have his private physician on standby. "Your suite is being prepared," Damon told her, shrugging off his jacket with a barely concealed grimace. "You'll stay there until this threat is neutralized." I don't need your protection, Lena snapped. But her protest sounded hollow, even to her own ears. The sniper's bullets had come too close. Dr. Chen worked quickly, cleaning and stitching the wound, while Damon sat stoically in an armchair, his jaw clenched. Lena caught the slight tightening around his eyes, the only indication of pain he allowed himself to show. Same old Damon, treating vulnerability like a cardinal sin. She paced the expansive living room, taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a stunning view of Chicago's glittering skyline. The decor was sleek, masculine, and absurdly expensive. All dark woods and leather, exactly what you'd expect from a man of his position. Armed guards stationed themselves at every entry point, their presence a reminder that this sanctuary was also a cage. You should eat something, Damon said once the doctor had finished and departed. He'd changed into a fresh black shirt, the fabric pulling across his broad shoulders as he moved toward the kitchen. I'm not hungry. Wasn't a request. His tone brooked no argument as he pressed a button on a sleek panel. Within minutes, his staff brought out covered plates of still steaming food. The dining table could have seated 20, yet they sat across from each other at one end, the distance between them both too much and not enough. The pasta was perfectly prepared, but Lena could barely taste it through her anger. You can't keep me here, she said, stabbing at a piece of chicken with more force than necessary. Watch me. Damon took a measured sip of wine. Someone just tried to kill you on my territory. That makes it my business. Everything's your business, isn't it? Your territory, your rules, your control. The old accusations spilled out before she could stop them. That's why I left. His hand tightened on his glass. You didn't leave. You disappeared. Not even a goodbye. Would you have let me go if I'd tried to say goodbye? The silence that followed was answer enough. They both remembered those last months, his increasing possessiveness, the way he'd tracked her movements, assigned guards to shadow her every step. She'd felt like a precious bird being slowly enclosed in a gilded cage. I was protecting you, he finally said, his voice rough. You were suffocating me. Lena pushed her plate away. I couldn't breathe, Damon. Every decision, every move I made, it all had to go through you first. Because I knew what could happen. His control slipped, revealing the fury beneath. The dangers you faced just by being with me. And look what happened today. Someone still wants you dead. That has nothing to do with us. This is about my father's past. Our pasts are connected, whether you like it or not. He stood, looming over the table. The sooner you accept that, the better chance we have of keeping you alive. Heat radiated from his proximity, stirring memories she'd fought hard to bury. Nights tangled in silk sheets, his hands mapping every inch of her skin, his mouth claiming her with desperate hunger. The way he'd look at her sometimes, like she was water in a desert, like she was everything. Lena pushed back from the table, needing distance. Show me to my room! His jaw clenched, but he nodded, leading her down a hallway lined with original artwork. The guest suite was larger than her entire apartment, decorated in soft creams and blues. A king-sized bed dominated the space, and a wall of windows offered another stunning view of the city. My room is next door, he said, his voice carefully neutral. The suite is secured. No one gets in or out without my authorization. Meaning I'm trapped. Meaning you're safe. He stepped closer, and for a moment she thought he might touch her. Instead, he reached past her to point out a panel by the door. Security controls. Panic button. Use them if you need anything. Before she could respond, he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him. Lena listened to his footsteps fade, then sank onto the edge of the bed, exhaustion hitting her like a wave. She pulled out her phone, checking for messages from her sisters. Nothing new since their last update confirming they were secure at a different safe house. Her fingers hovered over the keys, wanting to tell them everything, about Damon, about the sniper, about the storm of emotions threatening to overwhelm her. Instead, she typed a brief, all clear, and set the phone aside. The less they knew about her complicated history with Damon Rourke, the better. Outside her door, she heard footsteps pause. Through the inch of space beneath, she could see his shadow standing guard. 1 minute passed. 2. 3. She held her breath, wondering if he would knock, if they would finally have the conversation they'd never gotten to have 5 years ago. But the shadow eventually moved away, and she released her breath in a shaky sigh. Lying back on the impossibly soft mattress, Lena stared at the ceiling, knowing sleep would be impossible. In the room next door, Damon stood at his windows, one hand pressed against the cool glass. The city stretched endlessly below, his empire of shadows and steel, but his thoughts were only of the woman separated from him by a single wall. 5 years hadn't dimmed the pull between them. If anything, it was stronger now, a dangerous current threatening to drag them both under. He could still feel her presence like a physical ache, could still smell her subtle perfume lingering in the air. The memory of those bullets whistling past her head made his blood run cold. Someone was using their shared past as a weapon, and until he found out who, she wasn't leaving his sight. Even if it meant enduring this exquisite torture of having her so close, yet completely out of reach. Chicago's endless symphony of sirens and traffic rose from the streets below, a familiar lullaby that usually soothed him to sleep. But tonight, rest was impossible, not with Lena Calderon back in his life, back in his space, bringing with her all the dreams and demons they'd never managed to lay to rest. In their separate rooms, both lay awake, haunted by what had been and what might have been. The night stretched endless before them, filled with unspoken words and unfulfilled longings, while the city continued its relentless pulse beneath the star-scattered sky. A harsh knock jolted Lena from her fitful sleep. Dawn's pale light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the luxurious guest suite. 10 minutes, Damon's voice commanded through the door. I have information on the sniper's weapons supplier. Lena was already moving, grateful she'd slept in her clothes. I'm coming with you. No, you're not. His tone left no room for argument. She yanked open the door, finding him in an impeccably tailored black suit that made him look even more dangerous. I'm not some helpless civilian you can lock away. This involves my family. Damon's jaw tightened as he studied her, probably noting the dark circles under her eyes and rumpled clothing. You follow my lead. My rules. No exceptions. Fine. She'd agree to almost anything to avoid being left behind. Get cleaned up. There's fresh clothing in the closet. 20 minutes later, they were in his armored Mercedes, gliding through Chicago's morning traffic. Lena had found designer jeans and a fitted black sweater in exactly her size, trying not to think about why he'd prepared for her presence. The contact operates beneath Wong's laundromat in Chinatown, Damon explained, his eyes fixed on the road. He supplies specialized weapons to most of the city's elite hitmen. If anyone knows who armed our sniper, it's him. And he'll just tell you? A dark smile curved Damon's lips. Everyone talks eventually. The warning in his voice sent a chill down her spine. She'd seen glimpses of his brutality years ago, but always from a distance. Today would be different. They parked in a narrow alley behind the laundromat. The smell of detergent and steam mixed with garbage from overflowing dumpsters. Damon led her to a rusty door, entering a code that revealed a hidden stairwell. The underground armory was a stark contrast to the dingy laundromat above. Climate-controlled glass cases displayed everything from custom pistols to military-grade rifles. A slight Asian man in an expensive suit looked up from his laptop, his expression shifting from annoyed to terrified when he recognized Damon. Mr. Rourke, I wasn't expecting... Sit down, Chen. Damon's voice was ice. We need to discuss a recent sale. Chen sank into his chair as Damon's men emerged from the shadows, securing the exits. I maintain strict client confidentiality. Damon moved with frightening speed, sending the laptop crashing to the floor. He grabbed Chen's tie, twisting until the man gasped. Someone tried to kill what's mine yesterday, using a very specific rifle, the kind only you supply in this city. I can't. The first punch made Lena flinch. Blood sprayed from Chen's nose as Damon dragged him from the chair. Please, Chen wheezed. My clients will kill me. I'll kill you slower. Damon slammed him against a glass case, spiderweb cracks spreading from the impact. The sniper, now! Lena's hand instinctively moved toward her concealed weapon, her federal agent training screaming to intervene. But she forced herself still, remembering why they were here. Her sister's safety depended on finding the sniper. I handle hundreds of sales! Chen's words cut off in a scream as Damon's fist connected with his ribs. 3 days ago, Barrett M82, modified scope. Each word was punctuated with another blow. Who bought it? Blood dripped from Chen's split lip onto his ruined suit. The buyer used a proxy, professional woman, mid-30s, said she represented private interests. Lena's breath caught. Was she blonde? About 5'8"? Chen's eyes darted to her, and something in his expression made her stomach drop. Damon noticed too, his grip tightening until Chen whimpered. What else did she say? Damon's voice was deadly quiet. She mentioned something about family, about sisters needing to learn lessons. Damon's next punch knocked Chen unconscious. He let the man crumple to the floor, turning to Lena with barely contained fury. "You told your sisters where you were staying. They needed to know I was safe. They were followed!" His roar echoed off the concrete walls. "Now whoever's hunting you knows exactly where to find them." Horror washed through her as the implications sank in. Her phone call yesterday, even on Damon's secure line, had given the killer a trail straight to Joy and Michaela. Damon was already barking orders into his phone, dispatching teams to search the area around her sister's safe house. His other hand gripped her arm, steering her toward the stairs. "We need to move. Now." They emerged into morning sunlight that felt mockingly bright. Lena's mind raced with possibilities, each worse than the last. She'd been trained to protect people, to save them. Instead, she'd put her own sisters in the crosshairs. "Hey," Damon's voice was suddenly gentle, his blood-stained hand coming up to cup her face. "Look at me." She forced herself to meet his gaze, finding an intensity there that stole her breath. "I won't let anything happen to them," he promised. "Or to you." The tenderness in his touch contrasted sharply with the violence she'd just witnessed, but she couldn't deny the comfort it brought. This was Damon, ruthless and brutal to his enemies, but fiercely protective of those he considered his. And somehow, despite everything that had happened between them, she was still his. He released her face but stayed close, his presence solid and reassuring. "My men will find your sisters before anyone else does, but you need to trust me completely from now on. No more secrets, no more independent moves." Lena nodded, knowing she had no choice. The game had changed, and Damon's violent loyalty might be the only thing keeping her family alive. His phone buzzed, and he checked it quickly. "Cars around front. We need to move to a more secure location while my team sweep the area." As they walked toward the waiting Mercedes, Lena felt the weight of the morning's events settling onto her shoulders. The brutality she'd witnessed should have repulsed her, should have reminded her exactly why she'd run from this world 5 years ago. Instead, she found herself grateful for it. Grateful that someone as ruthless and capable as Damon Rourke was on her side. Because she'd seen the truth in that underground armory. His violence wasn't random or cruel. It was precisely targeted, unleashed only in service of protecting what he considered his. And whether she wanted to admit it or not, that category still included her. The morning sun cast their shadows long across the cracked pavement as they reached the car. Lena paused for a moment, letting the warm light wash over her face. It felt surreal that just hours ago she'd been lying awake in Damon's penthouse, trying to maintain emotional distance from the man who'd once meant everything to her. Now, watching him scan the street with predatory focus, she realized distance might no longer be possible. Not when her family's lives were at stake. Not when every protective instinct in his dangerous nature was focused on keeping her safe. The car door opened, and Damon's hand settled on her lower back, guiding her inside. The touch was brief, but electric, sending awareness skittering across her skin. As the door closed and the armor-reinforced vehicle pulled away from the curb, Lena tried to steady her racing thoughts. She'd witnessed Damon's capacity for violence up close for the first time, seen the darkness she'd always known lurked beneath his controlled exterior. But she'd also seen how quickly that darkness receded when he turned to her, how gentle those lethal hands could be when they touched her face. The contradiction should have terrified her. Instead, it made her feel safer than she had in years. The city lights sparkled through the floor-to-ceiling windows as Damon poured amber liquid into crystal tumblers. Files and photos spread across his marble coffee table, evidence of their day's work searching for the killer. But the professional facade was cracking. "I looked for you," Damon said quietly, handing Lena her drink. "For years after you disappeared. I thought someone had taken you, hurt you." His voice roughened. "Finding out you'd joined the feds was almost worse." Lena's fingers tightened around her glass. "I loved you then," she admitted, the confession burning her throat more than the whiskey. "But the violence, the darkness around you, I was afraid of becoming part of it, of losing myself." The Manhattan skyline glowed golden behind them as Damon moved closer. His fingers brushed her cheek, tucking a wayward strand of hair behind her ear. This time she didn't pull away from his touch. When his lips found hers, 5 years of denial crumbled. The kiss was achingly tender, filled with longing and regret. But before it could deepen, Lena broke away, retreating to the balcony's cold air. Damon remained inside, watching her silently. The line between them had shattered, leaving desire and fear coiled in its wake as the night stretched endless before them. Dawn crept over Manhattan as Lena checked her phone, exhaustion clouding her mind after a night of tossing and turning. A message from Joy flashed across the screen, encrypted coordinates to a federal safe house. "I'm coming with you," Damon stated, his tone brooking no argument as they headed to his armored SUV. The drive was thick with tension, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Inside the concrete building, Joy and Michaela waited with grim expressions. Joy's laptop displayed a grainy photo that made Lena's blood run cold. "Rafe Moretti," Joy explained, pulling up decades-old files. "He was Vittorio's protege, supposedly died in '98. He studied Dad's methods obsessively, could recreate any signature hit perfectly." Michaela leaned forward. "He swore vengeance after Dad refused to make him captain, called himself the true heir." "He's playing both sides," Damon growled, pieces clicking into place, "creating a war between our families." As Joy and Michaela returned to their surveillance posts, Lena stepped into the morning sun beside Damon. His fingers found hers, gripping tight despite the exposure. They drove back toward Manhattan's gleaming towers, newly united against a shadow from the past. Above them, empty windows and rooftops held countless places for enemies to hide. The skyline glittered beyond the penthouse windows as Lena pored over crime scene photos, her eyes burning with exhaustion. Damon's voice cut through her concentration, demanding she rest. "I can't sleep while Rafe's out there," she snapped, but her hands trembled as she reached for another file. "You're no good to anyone dead on your feet." His fingers brushed her shoulder, igniting sparks beneath her skin. "Don't pretend this is about my welfare," Lena shot back, years of hurt spilling over. "You just want to control everything like always." "I want you alive," his voice cracked with raw emotion. "Every day you were gone, I imagined finding your body in some alley. I can't." He broke off, vulnerability etched across his features. The tension snapped. Damon pulled her against him, and Lena surrendered, wrapping her arms around his neck. Their lips met in a desperate clash of need and fear. They came together in a storm of passion, clothes scattered across marble floors. Every touch erased years of separation. Every kiss sealed promises neither could voice. Later, wrapped in silk sheets, Lena finally slept in Damon's protective embrace. As dawn painted the room gold, he watched her, his whisper fierce. "I'll kill anyone who tries to take you from me again." Dawn's first light filtered through the penthouse windows when Lena stirred, feeling Damon's warmth leave the bed. His hushed voice carried tension as he answered his phone in the next room. Before she could call out to him, the doors burst open. Federal tactical teams swarmed the penthouse, weapons raised. "Federal agents, don't move!" Through the chaos, Lena watched in horror as they slammed Damon to the ground, his lips splitting against marble. Director Hale strode in, his cold gaze fixing on Lena. "Agent Calderon, explain your presence here." "Sir, I was gathering intelligence on—" The lie tasted bitter. "Someone reported your location?" Hale cut her off. "Rourke is suspected of orchestrating these attacks." Damon's eyes found hers as they dragged him up, blood trickling down his chin. The raw betrayal in his gaze shattered something inside her. Racing to the safe apartment afterward, Lena's world imploded further. The door hung splintered, the interior destroyed. Joy and Michaela lay crumpled and bleeding on the floor, barely conscious. Vittoria was gone. Above them, crimson letters dripped, "This ends with the daughter." Lena collapsed beside her sisters, the message's promise echoing in her mind. The war had become devastatingly personal. The phone's harsh ring pierced the chaos. Lena's hands trembled as she answered, stepping away from the blood-stained floor where her sisters had lain moments before. "Miss me, little flame?" Rafe's silky voice slithered through the line. "Your father's quite comfortable here. He keeps asking for you." "Where is he?" Lena's voice cracked. "Where it all began. The factory district. You remember fire, don't you? How it dances, how it claims everything." His laugh turned cruel. "Just like the night I burned your foster home. Consider that my audition for Vittorio's empire." The phone slipped from Lena's numb fingers. All these years, the nightmares of smoke and screams. Rafe had orchestrated that horror. "You're not going alone," Damon's voice cut through her spiral. He stood in the doorway, dried blood on his jaw, clothes disheveled from his escape. "How did you—" "The moment I heard you were targeted, nothing could hold me." He crossed to her in 3 strides. "I won't lose you again!" Their lips crashed together, desperate and fierce. When they broke apart, Lena gripped his shirt. "We end this together." The drive to the industrial compound passed in tense silence. Abandoned buildings loomed like ancient ruins against the darkening sky. Inside the main factory, Rafe waited with Vittorio bound to a chair, weakness evident in the old man's face. "Family reunion," Rafe sneered, blade glinting. The daughter who ran, the heir who failed, and the father who chose wrong. He lunged at Lena, steel flashing. She ducked, but memories of childhood flames paralyzed her. Rafe's blade sliced her arm as Damon burst in, tackling him with lethal precision. Their fight was savage. Fists, knives, blood spattering concrete. Damon fought with cold fury, each strike meant to destroy. The killing blow came swift, Damon's blade finding Rafe's heart. The monster who had haunted them fell, eyes wide with disbelief. Lena ran to Vittorio, cradling him as his breathing grew shallow. His weathered hand touched her cheek. "My daughter," he whispered, then looked too. "Damon. Protect her. Love her. She deserves peace." His eyes closed for the final time. Days blurred into weeks. After the funerals and endless questioning, life slowly rebuilt. Damon transformed his syndicate, using its power to shield rather than destroy. Lena bridged two worlds, helping federal forces navigate underworld intelligence. On a clear evening, Damon led her to Vittorio's restored rooftop garden. City lights sparkled below like earthbound stars. He knelt, offering a ring that gleamed with promise. "You were never my weakness," he said softly. "You're my blood oath, my reason to be better, to protect, to love." His eyes held hers. "Marry me?" Lena's heart swelled as she whispered, "Yes," the city bearing witness to their new beginning. Thank you for listening. Stories connect us in the most unexpected ways. If you felt that spark today, make sure you're subscribed. I share a new one daily, and the next might change your day.